This is Wade, and you are in Wade World. Today, we're going to talk about this very interesting topic that Wade has thought about a lot recently. Is a monarchy fairer than a democracy? Now, initially, when you think about it, based on all that we have been taught, that makes no sense. Because in a monarchy, you have a king, right? And the king has all the power, and you are just a commoner. But that's not really true. If you look at the history of the world, the king cannot and never has ruled by himself. The king, now we are going to envision what a monarchy is, right? So at top, you have the king. Now, the king is the final arbiter of power, decision, and justice. However, he needs the support, he requires the support of his lords. And these are multiple leaders of groups of you. So the structure is very simple and three layered. Of course, you could have lords, dukes, and the hierarchy goes on. But the fact of the matter is, it's a very solid structure. It's like the great pyramids of Egypt, right? So you are the foundation, and your lords are people that are from your race, your culture, your ethnicity, and they have to be respected to become lords. So you have to respect them and support them. And then you delegate your power to your lords submit that power to the king. Now, so far, so good. The king by himself cannot just do whatever he wants. And the most important fact is that kings tend to focus on expansion by wars or building things. So, war is something that is an inevitable part of the human condition. But unnecessary wars cannot be fought by the king. For example, if the king wanted to go to war and that war was very crucial for the survival of the kingdom, then the king would go to the lords and say, I need support. And they would institute an income tax only for the time of the war. So you never had income tax unless you were at war. And if the war dragged on too long or your king was failing, people would just refuse to pay the income tax. The war stops and the conflict either ends in defeat or the king comes back and he's like, yeah, I lost the war and now we're going to be taken over. Usually it was more like, well, lost the war, so we have to negotiate a treaty. Because the other side also had a king, and remember, war costs money. So he would also have to convince the people through the lords, hey, we need to go to war. So whoever won or was defeated was exhausted because they had exhausted the people, the resources, and the money. And this is where the concept of borrowing came from. The king would borrow from the people, promising them, we're going to win this war, get new lands, get new resources, etc. Right? And if they didn't perform, the people would stop paying, there would be a revolt. If the king didn't do the will of the people, for example, in today's world, especially in the 20th and 21st century, there are multiple countries which have unlimited mass immigration that no matter who they elect, these elected people just keep rubber stamping and importing more people. In a monarchy, that would be pretty much impossible because the king would not be able to replace his own subjects. If they disagreed with him, the subjects would rise up and they would threaten to overthrow their lords. So the lords would be like, hey, I'm going to lose my base of power, so I'm going to overthrow you. And the king would be like, all right, don't overthrow me, I'm going to stop this. And if the king didn't stop, there would be revolts. The people would rise up, the lords would unite, and they would overthrow the king and choose somebody better. So the currency of fairness in a monarchy is very masculine, and it's basically this: as long as we agree that you are doing overall well, and you let us make our income, don't tax us, and let us live our lives, you can be the king and you can have the title and you can live a nice life, and we'll give you our labor and whatnot. But if you Don't do your duty, we will violently overthrow you and probably kill you. Right? So, very simple structure. Today, ask yourself this: if you have elected multiple governments through democracy, do you have the power to go to a leader in any system and say, I want to violently overthrow the leader because they have failed consistently? You have no feedback and control mechanisms as people. Basically, democracy is a way for bankers to replace kings and you by giving you more of an illusion of power. Because the monarchy is inherently a masculine system, it relies on reality and men being masculine and not letting girls or other girly men control things. Men being masculine means you accept the reality, you understand there is a path for you as a commoner to rise through the ranks, become knight, become a lord, become a duke, become a king. But that requires sacrifice and masculine qualities, being stable, being a leader. And that hurts the feelings of girly, weak men and, of course, girls. So, a democracy, and you can short this on any AI that is honest, the rise of democracy has a direct correlation with the rise of central banking over the last 500 years. Bankers are basically non masculine men. If there could be some masculine bankers, but they're the exceptions. Banking and finance is not a masculine endeavor because you're not using any creative abilities, you're not using any power, you're not using any violence, you're just trying to make money off something that exists. It's a very underhanded, effeminate way of making money. But what the bankers understood was that there is a lot of you can gin up resentment against the king because he's one figurehead and blame him for all the problems that are occurring. So you can create problems in the kingdom and blame it on the king because, again, the king is the apex, but that also means he's responsible for all the successes, but he's also responsible for all the failures. So the way democracy works is it destroys this entire system of masculine men living their life contentedly and taking matters into their own hands and changing the ruler if things get too bad by force, and then restoring the balance. It takes it away and redistributes that power to all the people have a say, including girls, including who are notoriously fickle and emotional in matters of life and death and everywhere else, basically. And it gives everybody the illusion of power. Like, hey, we're going to appoint a new president every 4 years. So if you don't like that guy, appoint this guy. If you don't like this guy, appoint that guy, right? So you get into this continuous cycle of I have a say, I have a vote. But the fact of the matter is, the problem with this approach is that now you have unlimited wars. Why? Because the bankers destroyed the monarchy by giving a whole lot of less able men the feature of going to war endlessly. Remember when the king used to go to war, what did he used to do? He used to ask the people, I'm going to impose an income tax, fund my war. He used to ask the lords, and if it went too long or the war didn't pan out, he had to stop. Central banking allows the government or the people in government to issue debt. That means they ask to borrow money from everybody. But mainly it's the central bank, and they're called the national bank or the federal bank, but they're not national or federal. They are owned by banks which are owned by private people, bankers. So the king, instead of going to the people, has been replaced by the government, the Senate or the Congress or whatever, that just asks for money via bonds. All the bonds are war bonds, right? And instead of going to you directly, most of these bonds are bought by the bankers. Then come you, and then come other nations. So now, even if you don't support the war and you stop buying the bonds, it doesn't matter. You're out of the picture. You have no more power. You have no power that you had under the king of violently overthrowing anyone because the bankers are there. They're not elected, they're not selected. They might not even be your ethnicity or your race. They could be a completely separate tribe, right? And they will keep buying and allowing the king or allowing the president to borrow money. However, the debt needs to be repaid. If not the principal, then the interest. And as the principal grows, the interest grows. And as the interest grows, what do you repay it with? Income taxes and resources. That is why every single democracy in the last 500 years has, one, destroyed a monarchy, two, established a central bank, and three, established income tax forever. That means you always pay income tax. Most of you can't even imagine a world where you only paid income tax during times of war. So the rest of the time, you kept 100% of what you earned. Right. Now, interestingly, by removing any direct connection you had with your lords and whom you could rise up against violently, and they could rise up violently against a non performing king, now you have elections and a police force, right? There were no police forces in monarchies. There were, and tax collectors were hated. And tax collectors, if they collected too much tax, the people would basically hang them. Now you have a system where you can pretend you have power through elections. But again, elections are stolen all the time. In places like the Ukraine, if you don't vote the right way, they make you vote again and again. In places like the EU, a lot of countries didn't want the EU to become a global bloc. They voted again and again for the EU to not become a global bloc. So these people just passed a treaty and made it a global bloc. So elections are basically trying to keep the majority of weak men, girls, and everybody else under the illusion they have power by going to vote, but it's actually robbed you of the power because the girls in the house had the power to tell their husbands, we can't feed the children, we need to do something. And the husband would be like, or the father, mother, brother, sister, right? They would be like, wow, I need to care for my family. I need to care for my girls, my sons, my daughters, my father, mother, my brother, sister. And they would pick up arms and march on the Lord. And the Lord would pick up arms and march on the king. Now, that power is taken away from you. If you elect somebody, they're in power for 4 years or 6 years. You can't do anything if they break every single one of their promise. And then after 4, 6 years, it's another trust me, bro, that you vote for, who can keep going on wars, who can keep spending your money. And there's literally no one you can go to with an honest complaint like, hey, this is enough. I've done it. We're a bunch of us. We're ready to fight. You would probably, if you went to somebody that you elected and told them, we are ready to fight to get this incompetent or malicious enemy of the state out of office, they would arrest you and throw you in jail. Remember, under the king, the probability of you going to your Lord with just concerns with a lot of people would not result in the Lord throwing you in prison, but the Lord thinking, you know what, these are my people, because you would all be related to the Lord in some way or the other. So they'll be like, oh, this is my people, I care for them, let me represent them to the king, diplomatically or by force. Now there is no diplomacy and there is no force because you elect people who are your racial aliens, randoms that you don't know, people from somewhere that you don't know, who have no affinity to you except for ideological affinity, which can be faked. And then once you've elected them, you are powerless. You are powerless even in electing people because the choices you are given are chosen for you. There is no genuine person who can actually come in and be elected because all of your attention is taken by people who spend a lot of money telling you this person is great, elect them. This person is great, elect them. So even your choices are flawed. And remember, the king, if you think about it, as the apex of an entire nation, needs to be a special sort of man. That is why the kingly dynasties were very strong, and when they collapsed quickly, because that is the central focus of an entire nation. This is not an average man. This is not an average person at all. It is the weight and responsibilities of an entire nation on their shoulders. Delegated to lords, these lords are not average. They have the weight of an entire region, like entire states, on their shoulders. So these were exceptional men with an exceptional burden of performance on them. But in a democracy, you have bureaucracy, unelected people running the country, elections at every level. You have city elections, district elections, state elections, federal elections. So instead of a king and lords, you have a bunch of incompetent, weak-willed, easily corrupted men running around. And the power is so distributed in front of you that there is no way for you to make any change. Whereas the real power is now hidden. Remember when you can go march on the king and throw him off? Which banker are you going to march on? Because the bankers run every democracy in this world. Every single democracy in this world is run by bankers. Democracy itself is a lie. It robs the power from you and gives it to the bankers by giving you the illusion of power. It's like the Matrix, where you literally are an NPC plugged in who thinks you can vote your way into change. And then if the change doesn't happen and your vote doesn't do anything, oh, well, next time we'll see. As your life becomes worse, you become poorer, your country changes, you are invaded, policies are passed which you don't like. And if you try to protest with force, which is the only thing that has changed, you are arrested and thrown in jail. So tell Wade, what sounds fairer? A system where you're living your life, there is no income tax, and if there is an income tax, it is for a reason. If the reason becomes unreasonable, you can overthrow the government and your king, or a system where you have the illusion of choosing a new president every 4 or 5 years, or prime minister. You are taxed forever. You are taxed from birth till death on your, you are taxed on your earnings, you're taxed on your pension, you are taxed on the things you buy. And then if you are unhappy with how things are, there is nobody you can go to and say, I want to change this. And if you try, you are thrown in jail. And the people that you are told to choose, you don't really know them. They're not really your people. You just marketed these people as the choice, but you don't know who controls them. Who controls the people who are marketed to you? The people spending on the marketing. So you have replaced a simple figurehead that you could blame and you could also compliment for all the failures or successes by a bunch of shadowy unknown bankers who are boring people, girly men, effeminate men, and to literally destroy them would require so much organization and concerted effort that most of you will just fall apart. Now, there may be other ways of running a civilization, but we're just talking about a monarchy versus democracy. Even Plato has said that democracy is the last step before tyranny, and we can see that. Democracy and voting changes nothing. In fact, the best kind of democracy that exists are democracies in name only, dinos, because they understand that the natural order of things is hierarchy, which creates balance. And a hierarchy can never be had in a democracy where somebody who is an absolute loss of value, absolutely worthless, negative individual has the same power to choose a ruler as the most valuable, worthful individual in this civilization. It doesn't really make any sense. The value created by this person is humongous. It has benefited the whole civilization. This is a parasite elite. How can they have the same vote? And then you don't just vote for one person, you vote for so many multiple individuals, and there's no one to address your grievances. You know who you go to when you have a problem? The bureaucrats. Did you vote for any bureaucrat at the DMV or the vehicle registration office? No, but they have power over you. Who gave them this power? You didn't elect them. Who are they? Maybe they're not even your people, but they have the power over you. Who put them there? It's the bankers, the merchants. In short, if you understand this structure, it would be easier if you just put down pen on paper and drew this. A king, lords, you. Simple. Democracy, bankers on top, government, which is a rotating list of changing random people, including Churchill, FDR. These are all puppets. Most of them are all puppets, right? Then a bunch of mayors, governors, all that. Then a bureaucracy, then you. And also stick a blood-sucking leech in democracy, because that's the income tax going from you every single time your life is lives under a democracy. Whereas that leech isn't really there in a monarchy unless it's in times of war. And then it's not a leech, it's a matter of survival most of the time. So in these two systems, which one do you think gave you more power? Which one do you think gave you a more honest way to ascend the civilization? Which one do you think left you alone more? Which one do you think let you keep all of your income. And that will give you the answer of whether a monarchy is fairer than a democracy. Understand this: democracy is the rule of the mob, but the mob is stupid. And the mob is made up of people who shouldn't even have any say in the rule. Remember the monarch, the lords, and you? Well, it's not like every single man of every household marched up to the Lord. They were a community together racially, culturally, ethnically. And they would discuss among themselves and elect their own representative to go to the Lord. This was much more equal because that representative would know the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, the sons and daughters of the people coming to him. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't be the representative. It's a lot more decentralized and a lot more honest, and it has actual power. The only thing democracy gives you is the illusion of choice with the poison of permanently sucking your wealth and your labor away. In a monarchy, you can have a family, you can have a house. In a democracy, you are going to work yourself to death and die childless and alone. This is what we are facing. This is literally the design of democracy. It's not a flaw, it is the design. If you give everybody who doesn't have any idea how to rule the power to choose, the power to think that they choose the rulers, while somebody in the shadows, the very vague shadows, can just run the actual country because they're the ones actually giving money to the government, then you are basically slaves. A king could also set up a central bank, but that central bank couldn't keep buying the king's war bonds because, again, this whole feedback mechanism is there to make sure the king behaves correctly. Monarchy, is it fairer than democracy? In this very, very short explanation, 100% yes. You have been lied to. And if you are resentful of a king, you don't deserve to rule at all. You don't deserve to have a say because the only people resentful of a civilizational structure that contributes to order and balance are girly men. Number one, not even girls. Girls are fine. They're like, all right, as long as you're taking care of the house, protecting and providing, I'm fine. I don't want to deal with all this nonsense of politics. I want to go out and take care of the kids and walk around in nature, pluck some apples, uh, pluck some flowers. So it's the girly men that love democracy. And if you look at the kind of people that make up the banking tribe, which is from every kind of person in the world, it is usually brainy but girly men. So at the end of the day, monarchy, masculine men of order who restore balance. Democracy, girly men who use underhanded tricks to create chaos. Which one is better for you in your life? Balance or chaos? If you're a normal person, you know the answer. And with that, Wade will leave you today to think on this. Until next time, keep it cool, keep it smart, and as always in Wade World, enjoy.